Power can feel like gold when you earn it, but like iron when you have to carry it alone. Victoria Adams, the woman magazines called the Iron Lady of Industry, stood before the giant windows of her mansion, staring at the rain threading down the glass in silver lines. Each drop fell with the rhythm of time running out. Outside, the world saw only her empire, the glossy offices, the private jets, the headline interviews. But inside the silence of her marble halls, the wealth felt meaningless, heavy as chains around her ribs. At 52, Victoria had everything people said they wanted and nothing she truly needed. The sky pressed dark and low over the city. Lightning flashed across the far hills, lighting her reflection in the window, a woman with perfect posture, elegant and tired. The house gleamed behind her, expensive art glowing in the lamplight, but it felt like a museum built for someone else. Even the air smelled rehearsed. Somewhere down the hall, Leo's laughter echoed faintly before falling quiet again. He moved like a man born for ballrooms, handsome, smooth, charming enough to make people forget how little truth his eyes carried. Years ago, that same charm had dazzled her. She'd been the driven business queen, and he the ambitious dreamer with nothing but promises in his pocket. She had thought his hunger was for victory by her side. Now she saw. It had always been for her throne. His affection had become performance art, smiles measured to the millimeter, touches meant for audiences that weren't there. And Sandra, their dazzling 20-year-old daughter, had inherited all his surface and none of Victoria's depth. Pretty, clever, and utterly absorbed in her phone, Sandra's affection came in transactions, new cars, a Paris trip, a promise of online fame. Love was another item on her digital list. Only Daniel, 18, quiet, gentle, cut through the noise. He often sat beside his mother in silence, reading, never demanding more than a shared moment. With Daniel, silence was comfort. With the rest of her family, it was the loudest sound in the world. That uneasy hum inside her had been there for years, but lately it had turned into an alarm. Too many late-night phone calls from Leo. Whispered meetings between him and Mark, her own senior vice president, a man whose ambition she had once mistaken for loyalty. 2 nights ago, she decided to stop wondering. She had stood in the dark corridor, the shadows wrapping around her like armor, and listened through the half-closed study door. Mark's voice was tense. Once she's out of the picture, her stomach twisted. Then Leo, calm as the serpent he'd become, replied, "The pressure's been too much for her. A breakdown is coming. The board will have no choice. They'll label it emotional distress, take control of the company for stability. Perfectly legal." Every syllable crawled through her like poison. So this was his plan. To use her brilliance, her dedication, her sleepless work nights against her. To paint her as unstable and seize what she had built. The empire she forged with grit and blood was being traded away by the man she'd once believed in. The knowing hurt worse than the guessing. But Victoria had survived bigger wolves. The cure for betrayal, she decided, was precision. That night, when the house quieted to the soft hum of the rain gutters outside, she sat alone in her study. She unlocked her phone, breathing slow and steady, then called a single number. "Thomas," she said. Her longtime assistant answered immediately, concerned. "Ma'am, it's late. Is something wrong?" "I have a task for you," she said, and her calmness scared even her. "It will require complete secrecy." "Yes, ma'am. Move everything. Corporate, personal, every cent. Transfer all assets to a private account overseas, under the secondary code I gave you years ago. Sell whatever you must to hide the movement. And then draft an internal notice, an announcement of catastrophic losses in the market. Effective tomorrow, we suspend all operations indefinitely." Thomas was silent for several seconds. "Ma'am, a false crash of this size will shake the markets. When Leo and Mark see that report, it'll ruin them." A slow, deliberate breath steadied her voice. "That's exactly the plan, Thomas," she said, eyes on the black window where her reflection watched her back. "They think they can break me. They're wrong. I'm going to test them. And then I'll beat them at their own game." The storm outside deepened, rain slicing across the glass like applause for her resolve. When morning came, it crept in, pale and uncertain. Thin light spread over the mansion's vast living room, a room that had once held presidents and prime ministers, and now felt like a courtroom awaiting judgment. Daniel sat quietly on the couch, reading the tension like a storm about to break. Sandra arrived last, yawning, her phone glowing between her palms. "What's the emergency, Mom?" She groaned without looking up. "I was sleeping." Leo entered next, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and the kind of smile cameras loved. "Darling," he said smoothly, "you look exhausted. Didn't you sleep at all?" He moved to kiss her cheek. She turned slightly, letting him find only cold skin. For a tiny moment, his charm cracked, confusion flickering before he smothered it with concern again. Victoria stood tall in front of them, hands clasped behind her back so they wouldn't see the faint tremor. She had rehearsed this scene 1,000 times. There would never be an easy way to break the illusion. "I have bad news," she began. The words hung in the air. Even the clock in the hallway slowed, its ticking swallowing the moment whole. Leo frowned. The perfect performance of sympathy. "What is it, my love? Did a deal fall through?" "It's worse." Her voice didn't waver. She locked eyes with him, searching for truth and finding none. "I've lost everything." Silence. Then, a sound from Sandra. A gasp snapped out of her phone trance. Leo let out a short laugh, strained and sharp. "That's impossible. Be serious, Victoria." "What do you mean you've lost everything?" She saw it, a flash of something slick behind his eyes. Not fear, triumph. Tiny, quick, but unmistakable. "The business collapsed," she said, allowing her shoulders to sag, as though defeat had hollowed her out. "Bad investments. A market dip I didn't predict. The banks have seized our accounts. We have nothing left." Leo placed his cup down carefully, then moved toward her with theatrical urgency. No, this can't be. We'll fix it, love. We always do." He pulled her into an embrace that felt more like a noose. She smelled the faint scent of his cologne and deceit. His hands comforted, but only to assess control. Sandra rose, wide-eyed. "Nothing? You mean nothing? What about the cars? My allowance? My London trip?" "All gone," Victoria said softly, letting the lie taste bitter on her tongue. "You're joking. We have to leave this house today." "Leave?" Sandra's voice cracked high with horror. "Leave and go where?" Victoria's answer dropped into the room like thunder. "To my mother's old house, in Asia." The name alone ignited chaos. Sandra clutched her head. "Absolutely not!" "A village? With dirt roads and animals? No way!" She spun dramatically toward her father. "Daddy, tell her she's lost her mind." Leo didn't answer immediately. He turned to Victoria, his mask slipping by fractions. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and harsh. "You foolish woman," he said under his breath. "How could you do this? After everything I gave up for you, for us, you've destroyed it all." His anger didn't come from loss. It came from frustration that she had lost it before he could take it himself. That realization stung less than she had predicted. It simply confirmed everything. He dragged a hand through his hair, a picture of despair for the watching audience. Their children. "You are a disgrace, Victoria," he spat, projecting for effect. Daniel, standing quietly near the door, stepped closer. He looked from his father's fury to his mother's steady face. "Is this real, Mom?" he asked quietly. Victoria met his eyes. In them she saw something pure, a flicker of faith. She nodded once. "Yes," she whispered. "It's the only way." He reached out, touching her arm. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." A small, aching smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you, Daniel," she said softly. "You don't know how much that means to me." One child still saw a mother. That was enough. The test had begun. By afternoon, the mansion had turned hollow. The steady hum of servants and machines stopped. Suitcases stood at the door like gravestones for the life they'd lived. Thomas had sent an old sedan, its wheels squealing when it turned into the driveway. Once it had carried farmers' goods. Now it carried the fragments of a dynasty. Victoria drove. The rain had turned to mist, but her knuckles stayed white on the wheel. Each bump on the road reminded her this was all still a performance. A dangerous one. "I swear my spine's broken," Sandra groaned from the back seat, shoving her phone back into her purse. "This is cruel. I just want to wake up." Beside her, Leo stared out the window, the perfect portrait of sorrow. But his eyes glimmered with calculation. He had no idea that this journey, the one beginning with a rattle and a lie, was leading him straight into a trap of his own making. Leo sat beside her. "The picture of misery. It smells like poverty out there," he announced. "And there's no signal, of course." In the front passenger seat, Daniel was a pool of calm. His window was down, the wind rustling his hair as he watched the world change from city concrete to lush green country. Every so often he would reach across and give his mother's shoulder a brief squeeze, a small gesture that kept Victoria's own despair at bay. Hours later, as the sun spread across the sky, they turned onto a dirt track that shook the car to its bones. They finally rolled to a stop eyeing a small clearing. In the center stood a house built of mud bricks, its iron roof rusted by decades of rain. Leo stepped out of the car and made a choked sound. He stared, his mouth open. "What is this horror?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Victoria, are you insane? We can't live here." Sandra emerged slowly, her hand clamped over her nose. What is that smell?" It stinks of damp and sadness. Victoria got out and looked at the house of her childhood. It was simple, yes, but it was honest. It held memories of a simpler life she had long since abandoned. "This was my mother's house," she said, her voice quiet. "We'll have to make do for now." "Make do?" Leo's voice rose to a loud shriek. "Me, I am to make do in this vale. After years of living a respected life, you bring me here to be stuck forever. You must be joking." Sandra's eyes filled with tears of pure frustration. "I can't, Mommy, I can't live here. There's no Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, not even a proper mirror. How is a person supposed to exist?" Only Daniel was silent. He walked to the back of the car and began unloading the bags. "Come on, Mom." 8, he said, his voice a steady anchor. "Let's get these inside." Grateful, Victoria helped him. The old wooden door groaned in protest as she pushed it open, revealing a single, small room. 2 plastic chairs and a shaky wooden table were the only furniture. Thick cobwebs draped the corners, and the air smelled of damp earth. Lee remained rooted at the doorway. "Take me back to the city, Victoria." "Right now, I'm not stepping foot in that thing." "We have no choice, Leo," Victoria said, her patience gone. "This is it. This is all that's left." "I should have just stayed with my friends," Sandra hissed dramatically. "Their apartment is small, but at least it's clean." Daniel set down a heavy suitcase and turned to face his sister, his usual calm finally cracking. "Is that all you can think about? Shouldn't we be trying to support Mom instead of complaining?" Leo rounded on him, his eyes flashing. "Oh, you be quiet. Must you always act so holy? Are you happy to be here? Suffering with your failure of a mother?" Daniel just shook his head, a look of complete disbelief on his face, and turned back to his work. Victoria watched him, a faint sad smile on her lips. She placed a hand on his back. In the deepening gloom of a seer, surrounded by the ruins of her family's pride, she felt a single fragile flicker of hope. The first night was a miserable one. They lay huddled together on a single thin mattress on the hard-packed earth floor. The darkness was total, broken only by the weak flickering flame of a lantern that made the shadows on the mud walls leap and dance like ghosts. The air, thick and humid, buzzed with the constant buzz of mosquitoes. Leo lay stiffly, his curses sharp whispers in the dark. "I'm being eaten alive." Sandra tossed and turned, pulling a thin sheet over her head, her muffled sobs, the only other sound. Victoria lay awake, staring into the dark space above, the fake weight of her failure feeling crushingly real. She had wanted to test them, but she hadn't fully considered the cost of their comfort. She felt a gentle touch on her shoulder and turned. It was Daniel. "Mom," to your son whispered, his voice barely disturbing the air. "It's hard, I know, but don't worry. We'll get through this." The simple words offered without complaint were a comfort to her. She turned her head in the dark. "Thank you," she breathed back. "You have no idea how much you're helping." In the shared misery of that mud brick room, she felt a connection to her son that had been lost for years, buried under the weight of wealth. The next morning, a rooster's loud crow broke the morning quiet. "What is that dreadful noise?" Sandra cried, sitting bolt upright. "Make it stop." Victoria rose, her body aching in places she'd forgotten she had. "It's morning," she said. "Time to start our new life." Her words were met with groans. Sandra stumbled outside, her designer pajamas stained with dirt, her face puffy, and her arms covered in red welts. "I can't do this," she cried, truly upset. "I feel sick. I need to go home." The raw reality of their situation became clear that evening. Hunger, a sensation they had only read about, was a painful ache in their bellies. There was no chef to call, no restaurant to order from. Victoria found a pile of old firewood and, feeling clumsy, tried to build a fire. She hadn't done this since she was a girl, and the sticks refused to catch, sending billows of sharp smoke into her stinging eyes. Daniel came and knelt beside her. Without a word, he patiently rearranged the wood, creating a small hollow for air. "I remember watching the village boys do this," he said softly, blowing a gentle, steady breath onto a small spark until it became a flame. Victoria watched him, a powerful wave of love and gratitude washing over her. "Thank you, son. You're the one making this bearable." Across the compound, Leo sat on a rock, staring at his hands as if he'd never seen them before. "This isn't a life," he muttered to the twilight. "It's a punishment." Sandra paced like a caged animal, her phone held high. A useless talisman in a world without a signal. No Instagram, no TikTok. It's like I don't even exist anymore. Victoria looked from her husband's empty sadness to her daughter's wild panic. Then she looked at the small, steady fire her son had helped her build. It was simple flame, but it was real. It offered warmth and the promise of hot water. In that moment, it felt more valuable than all the gold she had hidden away. A few days later, their small food supply ran out. Hope was not a meal. Searching in a small shed, Victoria found 2 old rusty hoes. She presented them to her family as the sun rose, its light glinting off the worn metal. "We need to farm," she announced, her voice firm. "My mother owned a small plot of land nearby. If we want to eat, we have to work." Leo, fanning his face with a large leaf, let out a bark of laughter, a sound stripped of all its former elegance. "Did you say farm? You honestly expect me, Leo, to dig in the dirt with my bare hands? God forbid." Sandra, struggling to comb through a tangle in her hair, crossed her arms. "Oh, me? I'd literally rather starve." Victoria looked at their faces with looks of disgust and shock, and her heart sank. She had prepared for this, yet the reality was a fresh wound. As she turned away, a hand reached out and took one of the hoes from her. It was Daniel. "Let's go, Mom," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll go with you." Victoria stared at her son, momentarily speechless. She saw not the privileged boy who had grown up with servants, but a young man of surprising strength, ready to face hardship without complaint. A proud, painful smile touched her lips. "Let's go, son." As they walked to the overgrown field, Victoria was torn between a deep sorrow for the family she was losing and an immense pride in the son who was choosing to stand by her. While they worked, their hands blistering and their backs screaming under the relentless sun, Leo sat under a mango tree in the heart of Aussie, his mind full of plans. This life was unacceptable, a problem for now that he was determined to end. His sharp eyes scanned the bustling square and settled on a woman who was the center of attention. She was large and loud, draped in expensive cloth, a heavy gold chain on her chest. She seemed powerful and, more importantly, wealthy. "Who is that?" Leo asked a woman selling vegetables nearby. "That is Chief Dana Sedana," the woman answered with respect. "She is the most powerful woman in Asia." A slow, calculating smile spread across Leo's face. "There," he thought. "There is my exit." Sandra, meanwhile, was plotting her own escape from the prison of boredom. That evening, she squeezed into her tightest dress and made her way to a Sears-only bar. It was a dim, smoky room filled with the low murmur of men's voices. She sat alone, like a rare flower in a dusty field, and waited. She didn't have to wait long. Emeka, a portly shop owner in his late 40s, with a well-known weakness for pretty things, saw her immediately. He left his friends and sauntered over. "A beautiful lady like you shouldn't be sitting all alone," he said with a smooth charm. Sandra offered him a sad, beautiful smile. "I'm new here." "I can tell," he replied, his eyes looking over her expensive, if now slightly worn dress. "What brings a city flower to our humble village?" "My mother," she said, sounding both sad and annoyed. "She was a big woman, but she lost everything. Now she has brought Usher to suffer." Emeka's smile widened. He saw a golden opportunity. "Perhaps I can make your time here more comfortable," he offered, leaning in. "A little money, some nice things to remind you of the city. In exchange for your charming company, of course," he winked. "My wife need not know." Sandra pretended to consider it, her lashes fluttering. "Well," she sighed, "a girl has to survive." "Of course," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder as if he owned her. And so, as her mother and brother prepared the earth to plant seeds for their survival, Sandra began to plant seeds of a far more destructive kind. Leo's approach was a perfect act of weakness. The next day, draped in his finest wrapper, he approached Chief Danessa Dana under the mango tree. He walked with a slight limp, the very picture of a broken but dignified man. "Good morning, madam," he murmured, lowering his eyes respectfully. The chieftainess's gaze swept over him, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "Well, well, we have a new face in our swear." "Yes," Leo sighed, his voice soft with fake sorrow. "My wife, she lost everything in the city. She brought us here. It has been so difficult." The chieftainess chuckled, a deep, happy sound. "A magnificent man like you should never suffer. Come sit with me." It was the opening he had planned. Within minutes, he was sipping a cold malt, laughing at her jokes as if they were the wittiest things he had ever heard. Miles away, Victoria and Daniel were breaking their backs on the farm, their hands raw, their faces streaked with sweat and dirt. His afternoon visits to the chieftainess became his new ritual. He would slip away with a plausible excuse for Victoria, a meeting with the men's group, a search for cleaner water. Victoria, consumed by the sheer effort of survival, didn't have the energy to question him. But Daniel saw. He saw his father's spotless hands, the scent of perfume that clung to his clothes, the flicker of a life lived separately from their shared struggle. He watched, and a quiet sadness grew in his heart. Leo's true destination was always the Golden Moon Lodge, a place of secret meetings. In a private room, Chief Dana Sedana would be waiting. The silence of the young receptionist Joy was bought and paid for with a weekly sum that was more than Joy's family earned in a month. "My husbands must never know," the chieftainess would remind her, pressing the notes into her hand. Joy would just nod, her eyes downcast. Yes, chieftainess. I saw nothing. One sweltering afternoon, Leo entered the room to find the chieftainess in a singlet, chewing on roasted meat. Her face split into a wide grin. My king, she boomed. You grow more handsome each day. Leo laughed, a smooth musical sound. You flatter me, chieftainess. You know just how to make a woman feel special. She fed him a piece of meat from her own hand. You deserve it, and I have something to tell you, Leo. I'm listening, he said, his eyes wide with excitement. I am sending my 4 husbands away, she announced with pride. Leo's heart leapt. All of them? They no longer please me. You are the only man I desire. I will marry you, Leo. I will build you the grandest house this village has ever seen. He felt a rush of victory. Are you serious? She nodded, a serious look on her face. And that is not all. The king is old. His cough is a death rattle. The elders have already chosen his successor. They have chosen me. Leo gasped, seeing how big his victory was. So I will be king, King Leo, she confirmed with a smile. She leaned in, her voice a low whisper. I have gold mines, Leo. I own half the land in this district. I have connections that reach the capital. I am not merely a rich woman. I am a powerful one. He was completely charmed. Chief Danis, you are magnificent, he breathed. She caressed his cheek. Leave that poor finished wife of yours. Come live the life you were born for. Let me adorn you in gold. Leo kissed her hand, a sign he had given in completely. I already belong to you, chieftainess. I haven't let Victoria near me since we arrived. She roared with laughter and pulled a thick wad of cash from her bag. Take this 20,000 naira. Buy yourself new things. Next week the builders will break ground on your new home. Leo clutched the money. The crisp notes a sacred promise. You are my angel, chieftainess. He returned to the mud brick house that evening like a winner. He tossed a bag of expensive foodstuffs onto the table. Where did you get this? Victoria asked, stunned. A kind woman in the market, he lied easily. Her husband is a traitor. That night, he and Sandra feasted on stewed meat and fish, while Victoria and Daniel ate their small portions of gari. Later, in the darkness of their room, Leo recounted his triumph to his daughter. Sandra's eyes shone with excitement. Are you serious, Daddy? Completely, Leo confirmed. She is fairer than your mother ever was. Sandra giggled, a sharp, greedy sound in the dark. If I find my own chief here, I'm never going back to that boring city. They laughed together. Their shared secrets were like a poison that was slowly killing the last remnants of their family. The afternoon sun was hot like a hammer on the dry earth. Sandra sat outside like a bored queen on her plastic chair, chewing gum. She wore a tight, shimmering gown that caught the harsh light, a recent gift from Amma. He had told his wife he was attending a business meeting. In reality, he had spent the afternoon with Sandra on a deserted path near his farm. As she idly scrolled through her phone's blank screen, a woman stormed into the compound, her face a thundercloud of rage. It was Mrs. Oro. Where is she? The woman shouted, her voice trembling. Where is that useless homewrecker? Sandra looked up, a rude smirk spreading across her face. She deliberately popped her gum. Yes, can I help you? Or are you just shouting at the chickens? You shameless girl. Mrs. Okoro pointed a finger in her direction. Stay away from my husband. Do you hear me? Sandra laughed a high, mean laugh. Your husband? Please. The man is tired of you. He came to me. What am I supposed to do? Send him back to your boring, dusty house. Mrs. Oro's face turned deep red. Shut your filthy mouth. I have given that man 18 years of my life, 2 children, and you a little snake. Sneak in to destroy my home. Sandra rose from her chair and looked the woman up and down with a look of great dislike. Look at you. You look exhausted. That's why he needs a vacation with me. Your husband wants a beautiful woman with fresh skin, not old, weary bones. You are insulting me in my own village. I am warning you, Sandra said, her voice dropping to a hateful whisper. Don't start a fight you can't win, old woman. In fact, just watch. I will take your husband from you completely. Tears of helpless anger sprang to Mrs. Okoro's eyes. God will judge you, she choked out before turning and fleeing, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Just as she disappeared down the path, Victoria stepped out from behind the house, a broken chair leg in her hand. She had been trying to fix it. She had heard every word. Sandra, she said, her voice soft with sadness. She spun around, her face twisting into a scowl. Oh, great. The saint has arrived. I heard everything, she said, walking slowly towards her. Is it true you're sleeping with that woman's husband? Sandra flicked an imaginary piece of lint from her dress. And what if I am? Her casual cruelty hurt her. My daughter, this is wrong, she begged, her voice shaking. You are destroying a family for what? A new dress? Some money? Mind your own business, Mommy? She hissed. You are my business, Sandra. I am your mother. My mother? She snapped, her eyes burning with anger. The woman who threw us into this pit. The woman who couldn't keep her own business afloat. You have no right to lecture me. You are the reason I have to do this. You are the reason we're living like beggars. The accusation so unfair. It shocked her. I know things are hard. She cut her off. This isn't hard. It's hell. You destroyed my life. I had friends. I had a future. Now look at me. I smell like smoke and I'm being chased by angry local wives. This is all your fault. Tears burned in Victoria's eyes. But she refused to let them fall. Please, Sandra, she whispered. Just stop. This path leads to nothing but misery. She laughed. A bitter, empty laugh that echoed in the quiet compound. The life you gave me led to misery. At least this way I get a new pair of shoes out of it. She stormed into the house, slamming the rickety door. Victoria stood alone, the broken chair leg still in her hand, feeling as though her own heart had been broken along with it. From a crack in the wall, she knew Daniel had witnessed the entire ugly exchange. The test was revealing truths. She wasn't sure she could survive. The morning air was cool and clean, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside the small house. Daniel stood by the doorway, a silent guard, watching his father prepare for his daily departure. Leo was dressed in his best clothes, a defiant slash of color in their drab world. He couldn't stay silent any longer. He stepped in his path. Father, he turned, his hand freezing midair. What is it now, Daniel? I need to talk to you, he said, his voice calm but firm. Please just listen. He sighed a sound of complete annoyance. If this is another one of your lectures, Daniel, save your breath. I'm not in the mood. Father, this life you're living, he began, his eyes pleading with him. The secrets, the sneaking around. It's not right. People in Asia are talking, Leo lawed, a short dry bark. Let them talk. Their words can't hurt me. It's not about gossip, he insisted. It's about you. It's about your honor. What happened to the strong, proud man I've always known? His expression hardened. He met his gaze in the cracked mirror. That strong man died the day your mother failed. The day she turned our lives into this shameful, pathetic existence. Daniel swallowed against a lump in his throat. She is still your wife. She was my wife when she provided for us, when she was a woman of substance, he snapped. Now she can't even afford to buy soap. So that's it? Daniel asked, his voice filled with a quiet, painful disbelief. The money is gone, so the love is gone. Love? He turned to face him, his laugh bitter. Does love put food on the table, Daniel? Does love put a roof over your head? We are eating love for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in this house, and I am starving. But Father, even if you are angry with her, is this the answer? Leaving every day to be with another woman. Humiliating Mom, shaming yourself. He picked up his cheap handbag. Your mother chose this path. She can live with the consequences. I, however, will not. Daniel's brow furrowed. That woman, you see, what has she really given you? Is it better than the life Mom gave you for 25 years? He lifted his chin, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. She gives me hope. She gives me attention. She reminds me that I am still a desirable man. Daniel shook his head sadly. She gives you pocket money, Father. Small change to make you feel important. And you trade your dignity for that. You who used to wear diamonds are now happy with a few thousand naira. His face darkened. Watch your mouth, Daniel. I am still your father. I know, he said, his voice steady despite the pain. That's why I am telling you the truth. Because I love you, and I believe you are better than this. He turned away, fussing with his clothes. Your mother is finished. She will never be rich again. A strong loyalty grew in Daniel's chest. You don't know that? He gestured wildly at the crumbling mud walls. Look around you. Does this look like the home of a woman with a future? Yes, Daniel said, his voice full of belief that surprised even himself. Because I believe in her, she will rise again. And when she does, I promise you, you will regret this. Leo laughed a cold, scary laugh. Don't hold your breath. By the time she rises, I'll be living in my new house. I will leave this place, and I will leave you and your poor, pathetic mother behind. He made his hands into fists, his voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. You should be ashamed of yourself. His eyes widened. What did you say? You heard me, he repeated, his look steady. You should be ashamed not just for betraying Mom, for betraying yourself. For a fleeting second, a flicker of something. Doubt, pain crossed his face, but he extinguished it, replacing it with a look of cold anger. He grabbed his bag. Be very careful how you speak to me, Daniel, he warned, his voice dripping with ice. I am still your father. He brushed past him and out the door, leaving him standing alone in the silent, sunlit doorway, his heart breaking for the man he used to be. Leo walked the dusty path in a swear, his head held high like a king who had been sent away. Daniel's words were a swarm of angry bees in his mind, but he batted them away, focusing instead on the glorious future Chiefess Adana had promised him. The new house, the servants, the title of King Leo, it was a comfort to his pride. Suddenly, a figure blocked his path. "Husband snatcher," a voice shrieked. "So this is the road you take to your daily shame." It was Fao, one of the chieftainess's husbands, his eyes blazing with great anger. Leo drew himself up, a sneer on his lip. "Look at this one. Who gave you permission to speak to me?" Flea stepped closer, not scared. "You who came from the city like a rat to gnaw at the foundations of my home. You should be the one hiding in shame." "You think he fear you?" Leo hissed. "I have worn shoes that cost more than your entire house. Do not trifle with me." Folk threw his head back and laughed, a loud laughing sound that drew the attention of everyone nearby. The billionaire's husband. Look at him now, chasing a village chieftainess who decorates herself with fake gold and empty promises. The words hit Leo like a punch. "What? What did you say?" "I said her gold is fake," Folk shouted, his voice ringing through the market square. "Everyone knows it. She is a woman of big talk and a small pocket. You are a fool chasing a woman made of glittering lies." "You lie!" Leo shrieked, shoving Faux Lake hard. "You are just a jealous, bitter man, and you are a cheap harlot." Foulness hoved him back. The world dissolved into a chaos of grabbing, tearing, and yelling. They tumbled into the middle of the road, a whirlwind of waving arms and legs, and furious curses. A crowd gathered instantly, their whispers and laughter a rising wave of shame. "Look, the city man is fighting like a dog in the street," a boy yelled. Finally, hot shame cut through Leo's anger. He scrambled free, his hair wild, his clothes torn. "Rubbish," he spat before turning and fleeing, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. He ran all the way to the Golden Moon Lodge and pounded on the chieftainess's door. "Enter," a lazy voice called. He burst in, his calm axe hattered. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. The chieftainess looked up from her meal, annoyed. "What is what? I just fought with your husband in the street," he cried. "He said your gold is fake, that you are a liar with nothing but borrowed clothes." She wiped her mouth slowly. "And you believed a jealous man." "Show it to me," he demanded, his voice trembling. "Take off the chain. Let me see it." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you mad?" "Answer me," he screamed. "Is it real or fake?" She rose slowly from her chair, her easy charm replaced by a scary coldness. "Of course it is real." "Liar," he sobbed. "I should have known. The quality, it's nothing like what Victoria used to buy me. Our forsets were plated in real gold." The chiefess's lip curled into a cruel sneer. "And you left all that to follow me. It seems you are the foolish one after all." The insult stunned him into silence. "What did you say?" he gasped. "You heard me?" She roared, her voice booming in the small room. "Do you think I am a fool? A man who leaves his wife, the moment she loses her money, has no loyalty. If poverty can buy you, then your value is very low." "You are cheap, Leo." He stumbled back, her words like a physical attack. "That's how you see me, yes," she shouted. "Did you think you were special? My husbands, for all their faults, stood by me when I had nothing. You ran from your wife's side at the first sign of trouble." Tears of rage and utter humiliation streamed down his face. "God will punish you." "Get out of my room," she barked, "and never return." He fled, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. The walk home was an ordeal of whispers and pointing. His grand dream had imploded, leaving behind nothing but the ruins of his pride. Leo collapsed onto a stone outside the mud-brick house, the world a blur through his tears. The laughter of the villagers, chieftainess's hateful words, the shame. It was a heavy weight. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty air. He heard slow, deliberate footsteps behind him and knew without looking who it was. "Leo," Victoria said. Her voice was quiet without anger, which somehow made it worse. He didn't answer, just stared at the ground, tracing patterns in the dust with his bare foot. She came to stand before him, and her shadow fell over him. "I am ashamed of you," she said, the words falling like stones into the heavy silence. His head snapped up, his eyes blazing with renewed defiance. "What did you say?" I said. "I am ashamed," she repeated, her voice still quiet, but now with a hard edge. "All of us here is talking. My name, the name of my children, is being dragged through the dirt because of you. Because you chose to fight in the street over a woman who was using you." He scrambled to his feet, his own shame turning into rage. "So you came to lecture me too? What have you become, Leo?" Her voice finally rose, filled with pain from many years. "How did you fall so far? From the husband of a respected woman to this?" He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Who made me fall? You did. You with your failure. You dragged us down to this gutter, and now you dare to judge how I try to survive." "I am not talking about survival," she said, shaking her head slowly. "I am talking about dignity, about honor. You threw it all away for a cheap fantasy and a woman with fake gold." He put his hands on his ships like a cartoon of his old proud self. "If you are finished, you can go inside. I am not interested in your sad speeches." Victoria looked at him, at the stranger standing before him. and a deep, terrible sadness washed over her. It wasn't just about the affair or the fight or the lies. It was about the utter death of the man she had once known. "You're wrong, Leo," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're Theon who has lost everything, not me." She turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the echoes of her words. The next morning, an impenetrable wall of silence stood between them. When Victoria came outside, Leo refused to look at her. "I found a job," she announced to the empty space between them. He glanced at her, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "So, in the city," she said as a security guard. "It's not much, but it's a start. Daniel and I are leaving tomorrow." The word security was a spark to a fire. Leo exploded with mocking laughter. "A security guard? You? Oh, Victoria, you're truly finished. And you expect me to follow you to be Madam's security wife? How utterly pathetic." "I don't expect you to do anything," she said, her voice flat. "You made your choice long ago." Her laughter grew louder, almost hysterical. "Go! Just go! I would rather stay in this miserable village than be tied to a failure like you. I'm free. I can finally breathe." Victoria looked with him at the wreckage of their life together and felt a quiet final click as the last daughter, her heart, swung shut. She nodded slowly. "So be it." The next morning, Victoria and Daniel packed their few possessions into a single bag. The silence in the small house was absolute thick with all the things that would never be said. Leo and Sandra sat outside on their plastic chairs, watching silently as their family fell apart. At the doorway, Daniel paused and looked back, a question in his eyes, a play without words. But Leo just stared past him with an uncaring look. Sandra was already lost in a daydream. He shook his head slowly, a sad acceptance dawning on his young face, and followed his mother down the path. As they walked away, the sound they had been waiting for erupted behind them. Laughter. Finally, Sandra's voice bright and carefree. "Some peace and quiet." "Nobody to preach at us anymore," Leo added, his voice smug. "I can finally live my own life." "Good riddance to bad rubbish," Sandra giggled. "Let them go and enjoy their suffering in the city." Their laughter followed them down the road. A cruel final attack that Victoria and Daniel took without showing any hurt, their backs straight as they walked towards an unknown future. The bus ride to the city was a quiet one. Victoria stared out the window, the blur of the green countryside, a welcome distraction from the sharp-edged memories of a seer. She felt a deep sense of loss, but also the first stirrings of a delicate peace. A painful chapter was over. Daniel sat beside her, his gaze fixed forward. He was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, a shared understanding that needed no words. He was the one constant, the one true thing that had emerged from the wreckage. The city rose up to meet them, a chaos of noise and movement. They stepped off the bus into a world they had once owned, now entering it as anonymous travelers, or so Daniel believed. Victoria led them through the bustling streets with a quiet purpose that Daniel found puzzling. They left the noise of the city center behind, walking for what felt like an hour until they reached the serene tree-lined streets of the wealthiest suburb. They stopped before a high white wall behind which stood a stunning mansion of glass and stone surrounded by gardens that looked like a piece of paradise. A sleek black electronic gate barred the way. Daniel stared, a feeling of confusion and worry tightening in his stomach. "Mom, where are we? Is this where you're going to be a security guard?" The thought, the image of his powerful mother standing watch at another person's gate, was a painful one. Victoria looked at her son, and a slow, mysterious smile spread across her face. "No, Daniel," she said softly. "This isn't where I work." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small remote. She pressed a button. With a barely audible hum, the great gate began to slide open. "Come on," Victoria said, her voice thick with an emotion Daniel couldn't quite decipher. "Let's go home." Daniel walked through the open gate like he was in a dream. The driveway was a smooth strip of stone winding past a bubbling fountain. Expensive cars, including a gleaming black sedan that was identical to his mother's old one, parked neatly to the side. "Mom, I don't understand," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Whose house is this?" Victoria stopped at the massive front door and turned to face him. Her face was a mix of different feelings, pride, sorrow, and a deep relief. "This, Daniel," she said, her voice clear and strong, "is house, our new home." The words hung in the air, impossible and yet undeniable. Daniel stared at his mother, his mind struggling to understand the huge difference between the mud hut and this palace. "Ours? But the money? You said it was all gone." A soft chuckle escaped Victoria's lips, the first genuine carefree sound Daniel had heard from her in months. "The money was never gone, son. I moved it, I hid it, I created the entire story." She paused, letting the truth settle. I had to. I had to know. Daniel was speechless. The events of the past few months seen in a shocking new way. The lies, the hardship, the pain, it had all been a performance. I overheard your father and Mark plotting to take the company from me, Victoria confessed, her voice serious. They were going to have me declared mentally unstable. I had to strip everything away to see what was real, to see who loved me and who loved what I could provide. So, the village? It was all a test, Daniel asked, the words feeling strange and inadequate. Yes, Victoria confirmed, her gaze heavy with the weight of what the test had revealed. A test of character, of loyalty, of love. Daniel looked down, a storm raging inside him. He saw his father's face twisted with greed. He saw his sisters cruel with contempt. The test had exposed them, and the truth was a hard one. And Dad and Sandra, he whispered. A deep sadness crossed Victoria's face. They made their choice, Daniel. I gave them every chance to choose us, to choose family. They chose a fantasy of wealth, and in the end, they were left with nothing. They refused to come back, even to the life of a security guard's family. They laughed at the idea. Daniel felt a surge of anger, quickly followed by a deep ache for the father and sister he had lost not to poverty but to their own flaws. They never understood, he said quietly. No, they didn't, Victoria agreed, placing a firm, warm hand on Herson's shoulder. But you did, Daniel. You stood by me. You worked. You hoped. You never complained. You showed me what true character is. That's why we are here now. This house, this life, this I saw a reward. It's for us, for those who know what truly matters. She pushed open the grand door and they stepped inside. The space was vast and beautiful, filled with light and art, but it felt silent, empty. Daniel walked through the rooms, the soft carpet beneath his worn shoes, his heart a mix of relief and sadness. He turned to his mother, his expression serious. Mom, he said, his voice steady. I'm not happy about the lie, but I understand why you did it. He took a deep, shaky breath. I wish they had passed the test, too. Victoria's eyes were wet with tears. Me too, son. More than you will ever know. She swept her arm out, showing him the magnificent silent house. But we can't build a life on wishes. We'll build it on what's real, on what's true. We'll start again right here. Daniel looked at this mother at the quiet strength that had endured so much, and felt a love so deep it hurt. A new life was starting from the ruins of their old one. He nodded, a mix of loss and hope settling in his soul. Let's make this a home we can be proud of, he said. Victoria smiled, a real smile that finally reached her eyes. That's my boy, she said. This time we'll get it right. They stood together in their new empty mansion, two survivors of a storm they created. They had each other, and in the quiet echo of all they had lost, it was enough. A few weeks later, back in Asia, a man named Tunde returned from a trip to the city full of exciting news. Tund was a Sears Village news spreader, his gossip network more reliable than any newspaper. He found Leo and Sandra sitting outside their Hville, fanning themselves in the oppressive heat. Good afternoon, Mr. Leo. Sister Sandra, he greeted, panting slightly. Leo eyed him with suspicion. Tunde, what do you want? News? He said, his eyes wide. News from the city about your wife. Your wife is rich again, Tunde blurted out. She is living in a mansion bigger than the one you lost. I saw it with my own two eyes. Marble floors, a fountain, more cars than a king. Leo stared at him, then threw his head back and let out a burst of mocking laughter. You are a very funny man, Tunde. Sandra joined in. Did you spend too much time in the sun, Tunde? Your brain seems cooked. I am serious, he insisted. People say it is all hers. I even saw Daniel looking like a prince. Leo slapped his thigh. Let me explain something to your simple mind. My wife is a security guard. That mansion belongs to her boss. She is probably sleeping in a small room at the back next to the generator. Yes, Sandra added with a worldly sigh. My mother, Arich woman again. Please. She's probably just washing the cars for the real owner. Tunde was confused, but I saw her open the main gate with a remote control like she owned the place. A remote? Leo hissed. The owner probably lets her hold it so she can open the gate for visitors. Don't be so naive. Sandra crossed her legs. It's what poor people do. They pretend. Let her have her little fantasy. We know the truth. Tunde scratched his head. His certainty shook because of how sure they were. But what if it's true? Leo stood, planting his hands on his hips. Let me tell you something, Tunde. That woman is finished. Her suffering is permanent. Do not waste your breath defending a failure. In fact, Sandra added, a cruel smile on her lips. Next time you see her, tell her husband and daughter said she is still a disgrace. They both cackled, their laughter sharp and ugly in the quiet afternoon. Tun shook his head sadly and walked away, a deep pity for them in his heart. Pride, he thought, was a strong kind of blindness. As soon as he was gone, Lau turned to Sandra, his eyes shining with a wild excitement. Forget about that fool, he whispered. I have real news, the chiefess. She has asked me to be her new husband, Sandra squealed. Papa, you're going to be a king. Yes, Leo nodded, his face alight with triumph. I will live in the palace. I will have everything I ever wanted. Me too, Sandra chirped. Emma promised he is going to divorce that old ugly wife of his and marry me. You see, Leo clapped his hands. Good things are finally happening for us. They looked up at the sky, their minds full of false dreams. They were celebrating a fake victory, completely blind to the real priceless treasure they had so casually discarded. They had chosen the glitter of a fantasy over the warmth of a family, and in the end they were left with nothing but the cold comfort of their own lies. While the truth, like a slowly coming storm, gathered on the horizon,